A movie director stood in the opulent lobby of the Plaza Hotel, staring at one of the most beautiful architectural spaces in New York City, knowing it was perfect for his film. But there was a problem. The owner had just delivered an ultimatum that sounded more like extortion than a business deal. "You can use my hotel, but only if I'm in the movie." It was 1992, and Chris Columbus, director of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, was facing a choice. He could find another location and lose the iconic plaza, or he could give in to what seemed like the ego-driven demand of a real estate mogul who desperately wanted to be a movie star. Columbus agreed, thinking he could always cut the scene in editing. But when test audiences saw those 5 seconds of Donald Trump pointing Macaulay Culkin toward the lobby, something unexpected happened. They erupted in applause. And in that moment, Columbus realized something terrifying. Trump wasn't just a businessman anymore. He had become something much more dangerous. He had become a brand, a symbol, an idea. And this is the story of how he did it. The transformation didn't start in a movie studio. It started in bookstores across America in 1987. That year, Donald Trump published The Art of the Deal, a book that would fundamentally change how Americans perceived him and, more importantly, how he perceived himself. The book wasn't just successful, it was a cultural phenomenon. It dominated the New York Times bestseller list for 51 consecutive weeks. 51 weeks of Trump's face staring out from bookstore windows, of his philosophy being discussed at dinner parties, of his name becoming synonymous not just with real estate, but with success itself. The book laid out Trump's worldview with brutal simplicity. "I like thinking big," he wrote. "I always have. To me, it's very simple. If you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big. And perhaps more importantly, the image of success attracts success itself." That last line wasn't just a philosophy. It was a roadmap. Trump understood something that most businessmen of his era didn't. In the modern media age, perception is more valuable than reality. If people believe you're successful, you become successful. If people believe you're powerful, you become powerful. The trick was getting people to believe. The book transformed Trump's public image overnight. He went from being seen as a New York real estate developer, one among many wealthy builders in Manhattan, to being seen as something else entirely. America's business guru, the man who could teach you how to win, the living embodiment of the American dream in its most audacious form. People who would never buy a Trump property bought his book. People who would never stay in a Trump hotel memorized his quotes. He became a household name, a cultural reference point, a symbol of 80s excess and ambition. But Trump understood that a book was just the beginning. He needed something bigger, something that would cement his status as not just a successful businessman, but as an icon. In 1988, he made his move. He purchased the legendary Plaza Hotel for $407 million. The Plaza wasn't just a hotel. It was a New York institution, a landmark of elegance and old money prestige that had stood at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South since 1907. It had hosted presidents, royalty, and celebrities. It represented everything aspirational about New York City. For Trump, the Plaza was more than a real estate investment. "The Plaza is the ultimate hotel," he said in interviews. "It's my Mona Lisa." And like any precious work of art, Trump intended to control exactly how it was displayed to the world. It was around this time that Trump established what would become one of his most audacious business strategies, one that perfectly embodied his understanding of media, branding, and leverage. He created a golden rule for Hollywood. If you wanted to use the elegance of the Plaza, the grandeur of Trump Tower, or the prestige of any Trump property as a film location, the price went beyond money. Trump himself had to appear in the scene. It seemed like pure ego at first, the vanity of a rich man who wanted to be a movie star, but it was actually much more calculated than that. Trump understood that every second of screen time was free advertising for his brand. Every movie that showed his properties was essentially a commercial that millions of people would pay to watch. And if he appeared in the frame, it created an association in viewers' minds. Trump equals luxury, success, power. Hollywood producers thought it was ridiculous. They rolled their eyes at the demand. They joked about it behind closed doors. But they also needed those locations. New York City had plenty of hotels, but the Plaza was the Plaza. Trump Tower's atrium was architecturally unique. These weren't just backdrops. They were characters in their own right, symbols of Manhattan glamour that no set designer could replicate. So they agreed, grudgingly at first. But they agreed. The most iconic example of this strategy came in 1992, during the filming of Home Alone 2. Lost in New York, the sequel to the massively successful original film, followed young Kevin McAllister, played by Macaulay Culkin, as he got separated from his family again, this time ending up alone in New York City during Christmas. Director Chris Columbus needed the Plaza Hotel. The script called for Kevin to stay at the most luxurious hotel in New York, and there was simply no substitute for the real Plaza. The production team contacted Trump's office to arrange the location fee. They were prepared to pay handsomely for access to the legendary lobby and rooms. Trump agreed to the fee. But then came the condition. The only way you can use my hotel is if I'm in the movie. Columbus was frustrated. He didn't need or want a cameo from a real estate developer in his family comedy. It would break the fourth wall, pull audiences out of the story, create an awkward moment where a real person invaded a fictional narrative. But Trump was immovable. No cameo, no Plaza. So Columbus agreed, figuring he would shoot the scene, satisfy Trump's ego, and then leave it on the cutting room floor. Trump would never know, and the movie would be better without the distraction. They filmed the scene. It was simple, almost throwaway. Young Kevin enters the Plaza's opulent lobby, completely lost in the massive space. He approaches a man in a long coat standing near the entrance. "Excuse me, where's the lobby?" Kevin asks innocently. The man, Trump, turns and without breaking stride, points toward the main desk. "Down the hall and to the left," he says curtly, barely acknowledging the kid before walking away. 5 seconds. That's all it was. 5 seconds of Trump doing essentially nothing except pointing and delivering a single line in the most bored, dismissive tone imaginable. Columbus watched the take, shrugged, and moved on to the next scene. He would deal with cutting it later. But then came the test screenings. Columbus sat in the back of a darkened theater, watching audiences react to his film. Most of the movie played as expected. Kids laughed at Kevin's antics. Parents smiled at the slapstick. Everything was going according to plan. Then that scene came on. Kevin walks up to Trump. "Excuse me, where's the lobby?" Trump points. "Down the hall and to the left." The audience erupted. Not just polite laughter, not just scattered chuckles. A genuine, enthusiastic wave of recognition and delight swept through the theater. People pointed at the screen. They nudged their companions. They whispered excitedly. Some actually applauded. Columbus sat there, stunned. He had planned to cut that scene. He thought it was a pointless ego stroke for an egomaniacal real estate developer. But the audience loved it. They didn't see it as breaking the fourth wall. They saw it as a delightful Easter egg, a little piece of real New York invading the fictional story. Trump wasn't just some random businessman to them. He was already a celebrity, a recognizable face that represented Manhattan wealth and success. Have you ever planned to remove something you thought was worthless, only to discover everyone else loved it? Ever been surprised by what resonates with people? Leave it in the comments if you've had that experience, because what Columbus learned in that theater would prove prophetic about Trump's entire trajectory. Columbus kept the scene. Home Alone 2 became a massive hit, grossing over $300 million worldwide. And that 5-second cameo? It became one of the most recognized moments in the film. Generations of children would grow up watching young Kevin get directions from Donald Trump in the Plaza Hotel lobby, cementing an association in their minds. Trump meant New York, meant success, meant arrival. But Trump wasn't stopping there. Throughout the 1990s, he turned himself into a Hollywood fixture, not as an actor, but as himself. He became the go-to cameo for any show or movie that wanted to signal wealth, power, or New York prestige. In 1994, he appeared on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. In that episode, Carlton Banks, the character obsessed with wealth and status, literally faints with excitement when Trump walks into the mansion. The joke was that meeting Trump was the ultimate achievement for someone who worshipped success. Trump played himself with perfect deadpan seriousness, understanding that the humor came from people's perception of him, not from him trying to be funny. That same year, he appeared in The Little Rascals, playing the perfect rich father to a spoiled kid. His character tells his son, "You're the best son money can buy." The line was simultaneously a joke and a perfect encapsulation of the Trump brand. Everything, even fatherhood, could be bought if you had enough money. In 1999, Sex and the City featured Trump's presence in a restaurant as shorthand for the absolute peak of New York's social pyramid. The characters didn't need to interact with him. His mere presence in the frame was enough to communicate status. Each appearance was brief. Each was essentially playing himself, but collectively they were building something powerful. Trump was creating a persona that transcended business. He was becoming a cultural icon, a shorthand reference that screenwriters could use to instantly communicate wealth, empower, and New York glamour. He was branding himself into American consciousness through free advertising disguised as cameo appearances. The brilliance of the strategy became clear. While other billionaires hid from cameras, avoided publicity, and tried to maintain privacy, Trump was doing the opposite. He was making himself as visible, as recognizable, as unavoidable as possible. Every appearance reinforced the brand. Every mention in pop culture added value to the Trump name. Then came 2004, and the strategy reached its apex. Producer Mark Burnett approached Trump with an idea for a reality television show. Trump would play himself, a business mogul, judging aspiring entrepreneurs competing for a job in his organization. The show would be called The Apprentice. Trump's friends thought it would damage his image. Serious businessmen didn't do reality TV. It was beneath someone of his stature, but Trump saw what they didn't. He saw an opportunity to take everything he had built through cameos, through the art of the deal, through his careful construction of the Trump brand, and amplify it 1,000-fold. The Apprentice became a phenomenon. The show's premise was simple. Contestants competed in business challenges. Trump evaluated their performance, and at the end of each episode, someone would be called into Trump's boardroom for judgment. The climactic moment came when Trump would point his finger and deliver the line that would become one of the most famous catchphrases in television history: "You're fired." That phrase entered the cultural lexicon overnight. People said it at work, at home, as a joke with friends. Children said it on playgrounds. It became a meme before memes were everywhere. And every time someone said, "You're fired," they were reinforcing Trump's image as the ultimate business authority. The man with the power to make or break careers with a single word. The show ran for 14 seasons. It made Trump approximately $200 million. But more valuable than the money was what it did for his brand. Millions of Americans invited Trump into their homes every week. They watched him evaluate business decisions, dispense wisdom, demonstrate leadership. He became America's business mentor, the tough but fair boss that everyone either wanted to work for or wanted to be. Looking back, the entire arc becomes clear. From the book in 1987 to the cameos in the 90s to The Apprentice in 2004, Trump wasn't just building buildings. He was building a character, a persona, a brand that was worth more than any single property he owned. He understood that in modern America, fame is currency, attention is power, recognition is leverage. When he eventually ran for president in 2016, people didn't see a politician. They saw the guy who pointed Kevin toward the plaza lobby. They saw the boss from The Apprentice. They saw the author of The Art of the Deal. They saw decades of carefully constructed image, of strategic media manipulation, of turning every appearance into an advertisement for the Trump brand. That 5-second cameo in Home Alone 2 wasn't just an ego trip. It was a calculated investment in a brand that would eventually carry him to the White House. Trump understood what most people don't. In the 21st century, the most valuable thing you can build isn't a skyscraper. It's a name that people recognize, trust, and associate with success. He built that name one cameo at a time, one catchphrase at a time, one carefully controlled media appearance at a time. And it worked better than anyone could have imagined. If this story showed you how media manipulation and personal branding can create power beyond money, leave that like on the video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more stories about how people built empires from attention. And tell me in the comments, was Trump a marketing genius or just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time? Let's debate. And if you want to know other stories about people who turned fame into power, click on the next video that appears on the screen. See you there.